All right, welcome along to Wednesday Night Rugby. Pretty interesting point of the season that we've reached, and lots to get into in the company of Brian O'Driscoll, as you heard their rugby coverage with thanks to Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in. Brian O'Driscoll, are you in?
I'm all in. I'm all in.
We've lots to get into. It's been such a mad season, such an interesting time, and lots of interesting stuff to get into. First of all, I need to ask you about, we had your former colleague on at the top of the show last night. He's obviously hobnobbing it down the south of France, winging it down to the after party he was last night after Sam Bennett's stage win at the Tour de France, and he's gone close again today in the last while. Gone very close to the first Irish rider ever to win back-to-back stages at the Tour de France, but photo finish narrowly edged him out. But is that anything you pay any heed to, that flag been flown in such a significant way in cycling of all sports?
I wouldn't have been apparent, to his success other than, seeing it on the news last night and then looking at the interviews and seeing the elation and the outpouring of support for him, how people were so thrilled for him. It was such a raw interview on Eurosport that you had to kind of really feel huge excitement for him, because he really couldn't believe it. What I can believe is Rog hobnobbing something and jumping on the bandwagon of a guy he barely knows. Success is something that he's subsequently been renowned for in his retirement.
Yeah, and made no bones about it either. To be fair to him, he was full on. We'll keep a track of that on both Rog and Sam Bennett as the next few weeks unfold and see exactly what's going on. The news obviously filtered through late last night for Owen Farrell. Brian, 5 weeks, about right?
I don't know about that. It was a bad one, as they said. 10 weeks ban, the higher end of the scale. So, I don't know what about the good behaviour. I'm all for first suspension or first time being red carded, that people should look at it a bit more leniently. But he was banned 4.5 years ago, and I don't think that's a long enough period to wipe the slate clean and give him another 50% off. So I think he's a very lucky boy. I wouldn't subscribe to the vitriol on social media about how appallingly dirty a player Owen Farrell is. I'm a huge Owen Farrell fan. I think he plays on the edge. He gets it wrong sometimes, and he's been very lucky. But he's the sort of guy that you would really love to have in your team, because he throws himself into every single collision, whether it's legal or not. He doesn't shirk any responsibilities on the defensive side of his game. And as a teammate, you would respect someone like that, particularly in the number 10 position. But on this occasion, I think he's very, very lucky to only get 5 matches. He is going to miss the quarterfinal in Europe, but in the circumstance where Saracens managed to navigate their way through to a semi-final and potentially on to a final, he would be available for that. So I don't know. I'm mixed emotions, because I don't think you should throw the guy under the bus completely, but I think he's gotten off quite lightly on this one.
So the process of it, so like you say, you got 10 weeks and it's cut in 2 because the coaches, shockingly, the coaches for his club and country come in and say he's a great guy. And rather bizarrely in my book, a charity, the founders of a charity that he's involved with have come in and said, like, look at all this charity going on over here. I don't know, slightly odd to me that, I'm sorry, I nearly took this guy's head off, but look at all this charity work I do. It's an unusual scenario, isn't it? The whole references, the testimonial thing, when it's so blatant that it has absolutely nothing to do with his on-field stuff.
Yeah, I suppose be careful not to throw stones in glass houses. I've been involved in circumstances like this, both as sitting on the naughty step, but also as one of those people speaking on behalf of other players. And of course, you're going to try and put your best foot forward, try and pitch yourself or that individual as someone that's held highly in society, that does good work, that, this is an aberration on their, usual form. So you do anything to try and reduce those numbers. That's sport, that's life. And I'm not surprised to see the people coming in for him. I saw Paul Williams, the journalist over in Wales, asking whether, charity work and that sort of thing makes any difference. And I saw a lawyer come on and respond to him. And he said, good character, generally no convictions, is a mitigating factor. Positive good character acts of particular morale with causing societal benefits can attract further discounts. So it works. It works. So it's not going to work against you. It's going to work for you. And in this case, it appears to have had a positive effect.
2013, is that what you were talking about?
Well, like, listen, there's a multi. What's that?
2013, your naughty step appearance.
Yeah, and do you know what? I should have been red carded for it. I was lucky when the the card was pulled out. Wayne Barnes was referee, and he spoke to his touch judge, and I was sure it was going to be a red card. And to be honest with you, it probably warranted a red card. I got frustrated. They were killing ball all afternoon, and I took it into my own hands, and I stood on the back of I think it was at Mazzy back in their full back. Now he kind of let out a shriek similar to the ball lady over in the US Open when Novak Djokovic hit her. So it probably brought to the referee's attention all the more. But that said, I should have been sent off. I ended up getting 4 weeks reduced by 50% to 2. I think you've got to look at the circumstances individually. I think provided it's unintentional or you don't cause major injury to anyone, I think you have to bring in the circumstances where it is potentially out of character. And I think that 50% should be considered. I think thereafter, if you're on a second, third, fourth ban, it's got to be 100% of whatever the initial ban is. And, irrespective of time passing and lots of good behavior, I still think second time penalized, I wouldn't say you throw the book at them, but I think you get the full whack.
Yeah, I think, well, in your case, it was like 2 sin bins in a 15-year career, Brian, something along those lines. So that was to your favour.
Pilot at the same time, and I definitely paid on the edge, and I gave as good as I got, but I would have liked to have thought that I wasn't dirty, that I was physical. And yes, I probably got away with 1 or 2 other things where it might have been extreme, particularly when rooking was rooking. There was a fine line between standing on people when they were in the vicinity of the ball, but that's the way the game was. It shifted dramatically since then, and I got my just reward or just desserts in 2013 when I got a yellow card, but ultimately should have been red carded. So we're trying to clean the game up, and for obvious reasons. And Owen Farrell, I saw a montage of some big collisions and some borderline shots, and I'm not surprised that he has a reputation in the public domain about this, because he does play right on the edge. And if you're gonna play like that, you're gonna miss one every so often. And he missed big at the weekend. And I do think he's gotten off lightly with 5 games.
Yeah, well, we might loop back to the Champions Cup before we wrap up, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Pro 14 and the point of the season we're at there, and obviously this all Irish final to look ahead to now as well. Just on Ulster, maybe first to begin with, Brian, do you buy the idea that the Edinburgh game was like a turning point now for Ulster, that they've proven here that they've got bottle, and it's games like that can turn the culture of a team? Like, there's obviously been a lot made about the nature of it, that the fact that the game was getting away from them, that maybe in some regards had totally got away from them. And obviously Ian Madigan's been rightly praised, but that this is a pivotal point now in the culture and the future of that Ulster group, or just a one-off?
Well, it just depends on how they kick on from it, doesn't it? I think it can stand as something major if they're able to, garner confidence from it and go and put in a huge performance this weekend, and from their perspective, potentially go and win the Pro 14. Is it possible that they could do that? 100%. It's a final. We've seen Leinster, fallen to major underdogs in Connacht when it was 2014. 2015, so it wouldn't be the biggest shock of all time. But on the form book, looking at the performances of Leinster in these last 3 games versus Ulster, I could understand why they'd be major favourites. Ulster, they weren't terrible in the first half. What really hurt them against Edinburgh was that last ball, when they go through 8, 9, 10 phases, and then a bad pass at scrum half, or confusion as to who the next ball carrier is, and 2 guys leave it, and it's silly knock on. Those things really hurt them. And couple that with then going down, locking down for a scrum and giving away a penalty straight away. That's all momentum and territory lost from a concerted period of pressure being put on the opposition. Those things absolutely deflate you. They take the wind out of your sails, and it's difficult to come back from that. And it was only 5-0 at half time, and they hadn't done a huge amount wrong. Albeit Edinburgh probably, could have scored another try or two because Ulster got a little bit narrow. But when they played with the invention they did, when they were, whatever was it, I'm not sure, 20 minutes ago, was it 15 points down? Not quite, but somewhere in that vicinity.
Close,
They played with an ambition that and a freedom that you want them to start with, and a cohesion, and just becoming collision winners, and not willing to settle for being taken down in tackles, but driving for an extra 1 or 2 meters. And the knock-on effect to the next phase is the defensive line is on their heels rather than their toes. And all those little moments add up to the successes of putting yourself in a position to win the game, irrespective of Ian Madigan's heroics at the end. I think the heroics of the game, the game was won and lost on Billy Byrne's intercept when they were going to go 3 scores down, in early in that second half. Him getting back and intercepting that, and ultimately keeping Ulster in the game, was the difference between them playing this weekend and being on their holidays.
And looking at the weekend on the Leinster side, like I noted with interest today, and I have to say, I'll tell you my immediate reaction to it now. And I heard that there's been talk of resting Johnny Sexton. Like, there might be something else going on in the background, who knows? But certainly the outward talk is that he's going to be rested, potentially for this weekend, with one eye obviously on the championship quarters. And regardless, in some ways, of the quality coming in behind him, Brian, like, my first thought was that there's a touch of arrogance almost about it on the Leinster side, that we can win this game without him.
Yeah, I suppose if you're Ulster and you were looking at it, you would definitely see it as that. I would if I was opposition and you were looking at resting one of your major players for a final. I don't know whether there's any truth in that, to be honest with you. I didn't text Johnny myself, but I tried to inquire and didn't hear anything back. So whether there's any truth in rumours, we'll have to wait for the team announcements. But I think there is a huge amount of focus and trust being put into the other players, into the Byrne brothers, into Kieran Frawley. And I don't think Leo and Stuart Lancaster are just paying lip service to trying to keep everyone on side. I do believe that they genuinely feel that they can put guys into pivot roles, into key roles, and still get a huge performance from the team. It's not going to be the same side without Johnny Sexton, but fairness to Ross Byrne, anytime he's come in for big games, he's been calm, collected, and he's been able to deliver, as he did in the semi-final against Munster last year, and a few other times in Europe, away in France. He was still able to churn out a good performance. I think it doesn't shock me to hear that, because I do think that their focus definitely is about Saracens and about trying to get that 5th European title.
Yeah. We got to look at Harry Byrne, obviously, a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what it is with Leinster and Byrne brothers, but they seem to be knocking them off the conveyor belt one way or the other. Who's the better out half, from what you know? Him or
I think Harry is, personally. I think he offers more. I think he's he is a bit more aggressive, taking the ball to the line. I think he's got bundles of confidence. I'm not saying his brother doesn't, but I think he's absolutely oozing with confidence, bordering on that cocky sort of player that you want your 10 to be. And he's someone that I think you would really love to play outside, because he sticks defenders down on the inside and still knows how to throw the right pass. I think Ross is a bit more of a cog in the wheel rather than kind of an X-factor player himself. I think he facilitates others to get more out of themselves, whereas I think Harry Byrne wants to be a star player himself, and that creates more space for other players, naturally, by him being so aggressive too, but also having the brain capacity to pick the right pass. So I'm excited to see a bit more of him. We only saw him a few times last year. It's interesting that he's not finding himself on the bench more regularly ahead of his brother now. I thought at this stage he might have surpassed them, but there's obviously something going on at training to keep his feet on the ground, and the guys feel that Ross Byrne still deserves his position in the 23.
To stave off what we've seen happen before, and one of them ending up going off to one of the other provinces, which, as Leo Cullen has said himself in the last few weeks, is becoming a bit of a frustration for him. Do they try to do that Kiwi thing of like put one of them into, like, by the sounds of things, maybe Ross into the back three and try and work it that way?
Yeah, I don't think Ross is going to be a 10. I don't see him being a back three player. I think Harry could play at in the back three. I think he could play 15 before you know what his catching skills are like. His kicking game is pretty reasonable from what I've seen, but because he has that attacking mentality, that he would fit well, and he sees space and he understands um, the opposition defensive lines, and when there's an opportunity to take on a front row or a tight five player versus when, an outside back is there to be stuck and create space for someone else on the outside. So of the two, I would think there's more likelihood of Harry playing in the back three. But it is a bit of an embarrassment of riches when you look at the caliber of the three or even four of them. I haven't seen Frawley last week playing at number 12. He's a very adept footballer as well, very capable. So it's going to be difficult to keep everyone interested, feel as though everyone gets enough game time for them to want to continue to play for Leinster. It's inevitable that at some stage one of them is going to want to go and get more first team football. It's just a matter of whether it'll be before or after Johnny Sexton exiting the scene.
Yeah, I like that leads us perfectly into a conversation about Ian Madigan and his position in Irish rugby at the minute. He's big time, was the comment from Dan McFarlane after the game, and the cojones on him, I suppose, the big thing that's been shown here. And now suddenly a question about who starts at 10 for Ulster.
I still don't think that's a question to be posed, to be honest with you. I think Billy Burns is still the number one. I think personally in attack, Billy Burns offers more than Ian Madigan. There is no doubt that Ian Madigan has big cojones and always has. He's been someone that's backed his ability, particularly as a goal kicker, in clutch moments to deliver. He is turned into a world-class goal kicker for a long time at this stage. For the last number of years with Leinster, I didn't see a lot of him over in Bordeaux, and when he played for Bristol, he kicked those clutch kicks, and he relishes the opportunity to do it. But the bit that I have seen of him coming on, again, talking about the type of player, I think he fits into a bit more of the Ross Byrne mould than the Harry Byrne mould, where I think he still plays off the line a little bit too much. I think he still crabs across the field too much. And so the knock-on effect is that he gets defences drifting and makes it easy to nullify the attack out wide. I think Billy Burns plays a little bit more aggressively, even though he plays a little bit too laterally for my liking at times. He still takes the ball a little bit more to the line. I think he's more capability of pulling that last second pass than Ian Madigan does at this moment in time. So I think they stick with him. He's become a very important player. Just because Ian Madigan kicks 2 clutch goals at the end doesn't make the rest of his game perfect. It gives the team huge confidence that they've got this backup, but I still think that Billy Burns is number one. I'd be shocked to see if he doesn't retain the number 10 jersey.
Right, yeah. I mean, even that is as you said, they've got that in their armoury if needed. And the other question, obviously, about 9, Brian, about John Cooney, like, it's amazing because he's been one of the revelations of, like, Irish rugby, not to mind Ulster Rugby over the last 18 months or a couple of years, I suppose. But now talk of him being dropped for this game. What's your take? Stick or twist?
You're right. He has been one of the informed players in Ireland, and it's so unfortunate from his perspective that he didn't get the chance to start against Italy, which was written in the stars earlier on this year in the next Six Nations game. With COVID coming along and everything being stalled, it gave everybody else an opportunity to catch up, to refine their game, to get that right. And yeah, I suppose it took the edge off him. He was playing with this oozing confidence, and everything just seemed a little bit easier. He was seeing the game a bit better and quicker than people. And things were just falling for him. He was running great at support lines, picking up easy tries, making clutch kicks. So it was all happening for him. Unfortunately, for the last 3 weeks, it hasn't really happened for him. And maybe he's trying too hard. Maybe he's in a hurry to try and pick up where he left off. But it hasn't really happened. His, whether he's getting enough communication from those around him. I think there's been some stray passing. He's just looked a little bit out of sort. We haven't seen him with, breaking with ball in hand like we did previously. Obviously, his goal kicking is still very solid, but he just doesn't look like the John Cooney that we saw earlier on in the year, and it just shows how fickle confidence can be, where you're cock of the walk one day you have this break, and then all of a sudden you've forgotten what that confidence feels like, and it can whittle away very, very quickly, and all of a sudden it won't have done that confidence any favours at all when he's reading reports that Albie Matheson might come in instead of him. He was pulled ashore on the 42nd or 43rd minute at the weekend, feeling they needed a completely different tempo. And Matheson did revolutionise the game. He brought in energy to Ulster. He gave a go forward. The speed of delivery off the base of the ruck was much quicker. He wasn't waiting for them to set into systems. So maybe you do go with a confidence player at the moment. But, I feel for John Cooney, because it was all teeing itself up very nicely for him. There was talk of him being the Lions scrum half next year and everything. So we just have to wait and see. He'll come back again, but it's just a little bit of dip on the very lofty standards that he set earlier on in the year.
Yeah, geez, it'd be a big blow for him to be dropped for such a big game as well. In one word, which way are you going?
Leinster, because I just think, the quality they have, and even if they're considering the likes of Ross Byrne coming in at number 10 to still be able to get the job done, shows the confidence that they feel in all of their squad. Players seamlessly are able to dip in and out. I'm reading reports that James Ryan's meant to start again, where they have the ability to rest the likes of Luke McGrath for next week. Will Connors, there's talk of Joshua Lafleur coming back in. So when you're looking at taking guys out to give them a bit of a respite and then bringing that sort of quality in, it just shows the strength of their squad. Be interested to see what the bookies have them as. Ulster will need an absolutely enormous performance. Coetzee, McCluskey will have to give great go forward, and they'll just have to play with a determination and doggedness that we haven't seen from Ulster for certainly these last 3 games, but for a while, if they're to compete with this Leinster team, because they're a finely tuned machine at the minute.